In the spring of 2026, Marine surveyor Ethan Brooks was assigned to inspect several remote coastal landmarks along the northern coast of Scotland. Most of the job involved photographing structures, documenting erosion, and checking maintenance reports. It was routine work, and after nearly 10 years in the field, very little surprised him anymore. One location on his schedule stood out: Blackstone Lighthouse. The lighthouse sat alone on a rocky island nearly 2 miles from shore. Automated systems had replaced human keepers years ago, and the structure rarely received visitors. Supply crews only arrived a few times each year. When Ethan reached the harbor, he noticed something unusual. The local boat captain who was supposed to transport him seemed reluctant. "You'll be back before sunset," the captain said. It wasn't a question. Ethan smiled. "Depends how much work there is." The captain didn't smile back. "You don't want to be there after dark." Ethan had heard similar warnings before. Every isolated landmark seemed to have a ghost story attached to it. "What happens after dark?" he asked jokingly. The captain stared toward the sea. "People start hearing the signal." The answer made little sense. "What signal?" The captain shook his head. "You'll see." The journey took nearly 40 minutes. The sea remained calm, but dark clouds gathered along the horizon. As Blackstone Lighthouse came into view, Ethan immediately noticed its age. The tower looked older than photographs suggested. Weathered stone walls rose above jagged cliffs. The place seemed frozen in time. After docking, Ethan unloaded his equipment and began work. The inspection proceeded normally. The solar systems functioned correctly. The emergency batteries were operational. The beacon rotated as expected. Nothing appeared unusual. By late afternoon, Ethan completed most of his report. Then he entered the control room. Inside, he discovered an old radio cabinet. The equipment had supposedly been disconnected decades earlier. Yet one small indicator light was glowing. Ethan frowned. The radio shouldn't have had power. Curious, he opened the cabinet. Dust covered most of the controls. Everything appeared untouched. Then the speaker crackled. A burst of static filled the room. Ethan froze. The radio hadn't been connected to anything. Yet someone was transmitting. A voice emerged through the noise. Weak. Distorted. Almost impossible to understand. He adjusted the volume. The message became clearer. 3 words repeated over and over. "Turn back now." Ethan immediately checked the frequency display. Nothing. No active channel appeared. The radio wasn't receiving from any known source. The message continued. "Turn back now." Again, and again, and again. Then the transmission suddenly stopped. Silence returned. Ethan searched every system in the lighthouse. No incoming signals. No active antenna. No explanation. As sunset approached, he packed his equipment. The captain's warning returned to his mind. "You don't want to be there after dark." Ethan glanced toward the radio one final time. The speaker remained silent. Then, just as he turned away, a new voice emerged from the static. This one sounded different. Calmer, older, and far more frightening. It said, "You're too late." The words echoed through the control room. "You're too late." For several seconds, Ethan stood motionless beside the old radio cabinet. The speaker crackled softly. Then silence returned. He looked around the room. Nothing had changed. The lighthouse remained empty. The sea pounded against the rocks below. Yet the message felt directed at him. Not a random transmission. Not interference. A warning. Ethan checked his watch. The last boat wasn't scheduled to return until the following morning. A storm had begun forming offshore, making travel unsafe. Like it or not, he would be spending the night on Blackstone Island. As darkness settled over the lighthouse, the atmosphere changed. The wind intensified. Rain lashed against the windows. The massive tower groaned under the force of the storm. Ethan tried focusing on his report, but his attention kept drifting back to the radio. At exactly 11:17 p.m., the speaker crackled again. A burst of static filled the room. Then a voice emerged, different from the first two. This voice sounded panicked, breathing heavily, as though the speaker was running. "Can anyone hear me?" Ethan immediately grabbed a notebook. "Who is this?" he asked aloud, despite knowing the radio couldn't hear him. The voice continued. "We can't see the harbor." Static interrupted the transmission. Then, "The light isn't right." Ethan felt a chill. The lighthouse beacon outside was operating normally. He had inspected it himself. The transmission resumed. "Please answer." The desperation in the voice sounded genuine, almost real enough to touch. Suddenly, Another voice appeared in the background. A second person, shouting. Then the transmission cut out. Ethan sat quietly for several minutes. The storm continued outside. Lightning flashed across the sea. Then curiosity got the better of him. He searched the lighthouse archives. Most records were digital, but a small storage room contained older documents. Boxes of maintenance logs, weather reports, maritime records. Hours passed as Ethan searched through the files. Then he found something. A newspaper clipping from 1978. The headline immediately caught his attention. 3 sailors missing near Blackstone Lighthouse. According to the article, a small fishing vessel had disappeared during a storm. The crew had repeatedly radioed for assistance. Rescue teams searched for days. No wreckage was ever found. No survivors were recovered. The final recorded transmission from the vessel included a strange statement. The captain reportedly told rescuers, "The lighthouse light isn't right." Ethan stared at the article. The exact same words had come through the radio only hours earlier. His pulse quickened. The clipping included the names of the missing crew. 3 men, lost nearly 50 years ago. As midnight approached, thunder shook the tower. Then the radio activated again. This time, all 3 voices could be heard, talking over one another, shouting, terrified. And beneath their voices, Ethan heard something else. A foghorn, very distant, very old. Then one sentence emerged clearly from the chaos. A sentence spoken by a voice that sounded impossibly close, almost as if someone stood directly behind him. "Don't let it find the shore." Ethan spun around. The room was empty. But when he turned back toward the radio, a new light had appeared on the control panel. A light that had not been there before. And beside it, a date flashed repeatedly. October 12th, 1978. The date continued flashing on the radio panel. October 12th, 1978. Ethan stared at it in disbelief. The missing fishing vessel had vanished on that exact day. Yet the radio equipment before him wasn't even connected to an active communication network. There should have been no signal, no voices, no messages, and certainly no reason for a date from nearly 50 years ago to appear on a dead control panel. Outside, the storm intensified. Rain hammered against the lighthouse windows. The tower shook beneath powerful gusts of wind. For the first time that night, Ethan considered leaving the control room entirely. But every answer seemed connected to the radio. So he stayed. At exactly 12:03 a.m., the speaker crackled once more. Static filled the room. Then came the voices. Not one, not 3, dozens. Men, women, young, old, all speaking at once. The sound was overwhelming. Fragments of sentences emerged from the chaos. Calls for help, coordinates, warnings. Some voices sounded frightened. Others sounded calm, as if they had accepted their fate long ago. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. The room became silent. One final voice remained. The same calm voice Ethan had heard earlier. The one that had said, "You're too late." This time, it spoke clearly. "Look at the sea." Ethan turned toward the window. At first, he saw only darkness and rain. Then lightning illuminated the horizon. For a brief second, he noticed something impossible. A vessel, far offshore, old-fashioned, dark, motionless in the storm. The silhouette looked like a fishing boat from another era. The next flash of lightning revealed it again. Closer. The boat appeared to be moving toward the island. Ethan rubbed his eyes. The sea should have been empty. No vessel could survive those conditions. Yet the shape remained. Another flash. Closer still. His pulse raced. The radio activated again. The calm voice returned. "We've been following the light." Ethan looked toward the rotating beacon above the tower. Then he remembered the newspaper article. The final message from the missing crew. "The lighthouse light isn't right." Suddenly, he understood. Whatever the sailors had seen in 1978, they hadn't been following the real lighthouse. Something else had guided them through the storm. Something that had never reached shore. The radio emitted one final burst of static. Then the voice whispered, "Turn it off." Without hesitating, Ethan rushed to the control systems. He shut down the beacon. For the first time in decades, Blackstone Lighthouse went dark. The rotating light stopped. The beam disappeared. Outside, the storm continued. But the strange vessel vanished, gone as if it had never existed. The radio fell silent. The flashing date disappeared. And the mysterious voices never returned. The next morning, rescue crews arrived after the storm passed. Ethan told no one exactly what had happened. Most people wouldn't have believed him anyway. Officially, his report listed an unexplained electrical malfunction. Nothing more. Months later, while reviewing archived maritime records, Ethan discovered one final detail. The missing vessel from 1978 had been called the Shorelight. Its last recorded position placed it directly west of Blackstone Island, exactly where he had seen the silhouette during the storm. To this day, the lighthouse still operates. Ships pass safely through the area every year. But old fishermen sometimes share a strange story. On stormy nights, they claim a distant boat can occasionally be seen beyond the rocks, always heading toward shore, always following a light that no one else can see.